All right, everybody. Welcome to week 4 of Showing Up by Carrie Willis and Margaret Michael. And we are chapter 4? It is chapter 4. All right. And we're going to be discussing chapter 4 and seeing what God is, which ways God has spoken to us this week. All right. So, everybody. I guess I'll start off just by asking people if they might have underlined something, highlighted something, God spoke to them in some kind of way about a sentence or a paragraph or in any ways, just to see if anybody has anything that they'd like to share about the chapter.
Well, I thought it was very interesting. I love the story of Esther, but I actually went to YouTube and looked at the video if Starbucks was a church or whatever. And, I thought to myself, what if Starbucks marketed like a church? And it was pretty interesting because, you can see how we are as Christians. What's normal to us and it's so very normal. But it's interesting. It was very, very interesting and eye-opening too. Sorry.
That's okay.
One of the things that I highlighted, which is a challenge, I would imagine, on page 51, it says, whether you have days or decades left, what is the difference you can make with your life?
How did that speak to you, Edmund? What did that say to you?
Well, it's a challenge, really. There's a lot of things you can probably do within, who knows how long you're here. So, you make the best of what you have and help who you can help when you can help them,
Yeah. How can you, like Esther, leave a legacy that will never be extinguished? That's huge. That's huge. How can you, like Esther, leave a legacy that will never be extinguished? I think it was chapter 1 or 2. We were talking about Billy Sunday, and he was a great evangelist and preacher and stuff. And some of us have never heard of him before. And that was just 100, 150 years ago. That's not that many. Esther was thousands of years ago, and still people talk about her and the things that she did. That's pretty amazing, So that question, how can you leave a legacy that will never be extinguished like Esther did? That's incredible, I don't even know who my great-grandparents were, I have no idea who they were as people. I could say their names, but I don't really know much about them personally. But yeah, I like to think that maybe my great grandkids will talk about stuff that I did. That would be kind of cool. That would be. What about the story of Esther when it shared it in the beginning, and the way that the authors, I'm not sure if that was Pastor Carrie or Margaret that wrote that part, but in the story of Esther, did you learn anything new or see that story in a different way that you've maybe not read it before? Kind of makes it seem like a movie, right? I think it would make for a pretty good movie. One of the things that I said, that like this guy made Esther the queen, and he didn't even know she was a Jew. Like, how much did he actually know about her before he made her queen of the whole kingdom? I'm like, man, this guy did not do his research. He did not. I don't think he dated her very long before he made her the queen and gave her all that power.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I mean, it's a very familiar story, but to be reminded that if she didn't speak up, she could lose her life. And she was timid and hesitant to speak up because she thought she was she could lose her life,
Uh-huh.
then she could have lost her life anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder, like, in that moment, did she stand up because she valued the lives of all those people more than her own? I'd like to think that, rather than she was trying to save her own life, you know? In an analogy for your own life, you might say that you are Esther and your friends and loved ones who don't know Christ are the people in mortal danger. That was pretty cool. The way that they wrote that is like these people were about to be, mass murdered and didn't even know that they were in danger. Who's in your life that's lost, that doesn't even know? Like, it was talking about the statistics later on in the chapter saying, oh, and I've met plenty of people that say, oh yeah, I'm a good person, so I'll go to heaven. But like, really? Is it that simple? So how many people in your life are in that kind of danger that don't even know that they're there? So I wonder if we could think about that. Maybe we don't necessarily have to share names if we don't want to, but I can think of quite a few people in my life that I would consider to be decent people, but unless they're giving their lives over to Christ, being a decent person isn't quite enough.
A lot of people I know, they want to live their life. They're not ready to commit to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And it says later on in that chapter, most people under 40 haven't fully committed.
Oh yeah.
So if they know the truth and they have to live a certain way, I mean, what does that say?
Yeah.
About that person, I know a lot of people like that.
Yeah, everybody thinks they have time to turn to the Lord
Yeah.
until something crazy happens, right?
Yeah, spend their time partying and whatever they want to do, but hey,
Yeah.
few
Yeah.
stories in the Gospels about that.
Yeah. They made
You
movies
don't know
about that.
when your soul is going to be requested of you.
Yeah. It said, I wonder how much society is powerful, man. The people up high who make all the decisions that I don't know, I can't even really comprehend. Society is so powerful. It said, like the older generations, a lot bigger percentage of them were Christians. And then as the generations went by, it was like a smaller and smaller and smaller percentage of people. And I think that has a ton to do with society. And the changes and like maybe technology also. So many more distractions than maybe there used to be. There was I've been listening to a podcast. They talked about this Gallup poll that just came out last week, and they polled a whole bunch of people last year in 2021, and they talked about they pretty much just asked them like, how do you identify in the LGBTQ community? And it was like the older people, like that were born, the 40s, 50s, or whatnot. It was like 0.8% of people. And then the next generation, it was higher. The next generation was higher. And then the people from 1994 up until today, it was 20% of people identify in that community as not, heterosexual. And I'm like, that's 1 out of 5. Like, that's amazing to see that the way the society's gone. And I think a lot of that feeds into, the Christian church, like how, we've seen the decline in the past few decades. That doesn't mean we can't fight back, right? It doesn't mean that we can't fight back.
We get society's being desensitized slowly, little by little, a grain at a time. And after a grain at a time for years and years and years, now you have this huge mound, this huge wall,
Mhm.
and I guess people don't have that fear,
Yeah.
Life's like a movie. I mean, look at the movies, look at the video games.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's desensitized. Yeah.
Yeah. And just think, like a couple of years ago, like I said, this past Sunday, I preached one of Billy Sunday's sermons, and he was talking about, the theaters getting the nasty plays off the stage if we would just stand up and be brave and like call out against it. And I'm like, man, if he was alive today and he saw the stuff that's, just on cable TV nowadays, that's on free stuff, man, like he was calling out like plays on stage. Today we got the internet where you got access to anything at any time that you want to. That was a hard sermon. That was pretty, I know, Mark, you listened to it, Elaine and Lauren, that was, he was calling people out even 150 years ago. Nowadays, man, I wonder what he would say nowadays. But
I thought it was interesting where they said that, I'm trying to find the statistic, but yet just 15% thought the lifestyles of those Christ followers were significantly different from the norm. And I thought that was pretty amazing.
Where was that? Because
page 52.
Lauren and I talked a little bit about that, like how 15% thought the lifestyles of Christ followers were significantly different than the norm. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. There was a part where it said something like, like we perceive ourselves onto others in a lot better light than others see us, or something like that. Lauren, you remember that? What page was that on? I don't remember.
Page 55. With the bullet points.
Oh, okay. Unbelievers perceive essentially no difference when comparing the lifestyles of Christians and the lifestyles of non-Christians. That's crazy. Like they just don't see a difference at all.
Yeah.
You're gonna say something? Or Edmund, go ahead.
I think that a lot of this is generational. I could be wrong, but I think it's generational in that times and things have changed. So the younger folks are seeing things different to the folks born back in 1946. It's a lot different. And the kids in 1994 seeing things different than the ones that were born in 1965.
Yeah.
So, and they have a lot more to deal with, a lot more technology. So that makes a difference.
Yeah. What'd you guys think of the connected part, where I talked about in the internet age, we feel a lot less connected, even though there's all these easy connections that we could make with others. Like, how did that hit you? Have you experienced that maybe with yourselves or your kids or grandkids or whatnot?
I think that's absolutely true. We talk about that for work. A friend of mine, we've both been in real estate for years, and we talk about the fact that you have all these means of communication, and yet to actually have a conversation with somebody, to pick up the phone and call somebody and have them answer it's like pulling teeth. Rather shoot you a text or ask you a question via email, or it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous the way people try and communicate. And you can't always communicate correctly with a text. Sometimes you need that verbal, and sometimes you need the face-to-face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a big difference between connection and intimacy. You know,
Mhm.
intimacy, I think you need face to face. You need to see the nuances in the, you know, verbalizations and body language and yeah, there's connection. You can send a message. That's, you know, easy, simple, but I think people long for intimacy rather than connection when you put it that way.
Yeah, that's why I think online church is great, especially because it's got us through the last couple of years. But it can't even stand up against church in person with other people. Like that just means so much more. Like you could just feel, the spirit in the room, and it's just it's hard to explain. But you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Just in person is such a it's so much stronger and feels more powerful. I think that's why I've been itching for a building for so long. Working on it. I called a couple people today. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, connection. There seems to be, my wife and I were looking to get into the counseling field, and there just seems to be so many people that just like, I'm lonely. I don't have anybody. I don't know what to do. Like, dating nowadays is so much different than it used to be. People aren't getting married until their 30s or maybe even 40s. They're not having kids until much later also. So they're going through their 20s and they're thinking they know that they're longing for something more, but they don't know what they're longing for. They don't have that kinds of connection, and they don't have like the value of having a family and children and things like that. It's just everything's in front of the phone. Everything.
Swipe left or right.
Do what?
Swipe left or right.
Yeah. That's it. They made up their decision about a person based on a picture rather than an interaction with somebody. That's got to make dating. So I'm glad I found you before that happened, Lauren.
Me too. Me too.
But it's tough, and that leans into the loneliness. That leans into, just feeling alone. Is just the way that we talk to people nowadays, because texts really aren't at least with my experience texting other people. Like there's been plenty of times where my texts have been like completely misinterpreted. Like, why are you being so aggressive? I'm like, I'm just texting, man. I don't know. But and emojis, I don't really understand emojis either. I just kind of use whatever. But like apparently they all mean something on a different level, and I don't understand it all. But yeah, the internet it changed everything. It changed absolutely everything. So, but that's why presence is important. You make that connection through the internet, through a chat, through a text or something like that, but like you got to follow that up with some kind of in-person meeting. You got to follow that up by being present with people, because then they could feel, like the story about the Chinese restaurant where the lady was upset. She thought Pastor Kerry had died and stuff like that. Like he's just him being there almost every week. Apparently he went there a lot, because to not go for 2 months she thought was super weird. But she missed that presence of Jesus that Pastor Kerry was just emanating from, not him, but God was emanating through him. She missed that. Like, how can we be more like that? If your presence doesn't make an impact, your absence won't make a difference. Did that statement hit you guys the way that hit me?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being more instead of doing more.
Mm-hmm.
Could you repeat what you said, Pastor Joe?
If your presence doesn't make an impact, your absence won't make a difference.
I don't know if we can accurately self-evaluate the impact that our presence makes or doesn't make.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's a bit of a challenge to try to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah, but other people for sure know and can recognize the impact that you have made on them. So whether or not we know if our absence made a difference or not, that person will, because if you're not there and they don't even realize it, then maybe our presence didn't make an impact with them the way that we thought they did, or didn't, or maybe it did make a big impact on it when we didn't think we were. Because I've been through that also, where I've not me personally, but like my interactions with others seem to them to be a whole lot more meaningful than I thought they were. I thought I was just, just being friendly or whatnot, but to them, they really, really needed that in that time. So I think sometimes we over doubt ourselves, and sometimes we maybe don't, I don't know exactly how to say it, but maybe don't trust our impact as much as it is. It's a little bit of both.
Sometimes you can have a great impact on individuals and not even realize that you are.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
that's what I was trying to say. You said it so much easier than I did. At the end of that story, it says that the Lings have since moved back to China. But like Pastor Carey made an impact on that family, and they moved back to China, where good, strong Christians are very much needed. We don't really hear about China very much in our media, but it's not a safe place to be for a Christian. So, somebody that God was able to bless through Pastor Carey to the Lings are able to bring that back to a country that really, really needs it. In a way, that's his ministry working all the way across the world years later, because he showed people, not like teaching on a blackboard or anything, just by showing people, hey, I'm present with you and this is how you do it. They're probably mirroring that over in China, how to be present with people, how to love them, and how to be Jesus to people in powerful ways. So I mean, that's a huge impact. God working through Pastor Carey is now carrying all the way to China. That's huge. Christians must be true believers. There can be no more credence given to the idea of a nominal Christian. If you consider yourself a disciple of Jesus Christ, you must live as a disciple. I can't tell you how many people I've met that say, oh yeah, I'm a believer. I believe in God. I ask them what church they go to. I don't go to church. How useful is that to God? And there might be thoughts that we think about stuff like that, but maybe just being present with them will bring them back to church. People who've already had interactions with the church, positive ones with the church, might be a little bit easier to bring into the church, or bring into the church body, rather than somebody who has no interactions with them. I think somewhere in the statistics part, it was saying that a certain percentage of people had a bad interaction with the Christian church, which is why they don't like Christians at all.
My brother and sister-in-law, they were members at huge church, big children's church, big teen, but they were very cliquey.
Mm-hmm.
And everything had to, they were looked down. You looked down upon if you, it seemed like if you, wore this, didn't drive a certain car, they stopped going. They just stopped going. Now it's all on, televised or online.
Yeah.
And they're missing that part. And then COVID hit. They don't go out of the house hardly at all.
Yeah.
Now, very rare, man. I tried, get my brother to go out, and they wouldn't go out, when I visited in Texas.
Yeah.
They were just in their place, in their crib, had everything they need there, but they're missing that intimacy
Yeah.
from other people. I
Mhm.
feel bad for him, but his when you're married to somebody, the other half doesn't want to do this. A lot of times you have to conform to that, or you just end up doing it,
Yeah.
to keep the peace.
I get it.
But they're just missing out, I
Mhm.
think on a lot. So
Yeah.
unfortunate, it's unfortunate that those big churches, I won't mention any big giant pastors' names that preach real good, feel good sermons. I won't mention any names.
Mhm.
But that
In
clicky,
Texas, I think I know who you're talking about.
yeah, very clicky, and you gotta roll with the right crowd and this and that, and
Yeah.
very, very arrogant. So yeah, it
Yeah.
turned them off. Sad.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes it scars people like deeply, man. Um, one of our new every Sunday watchers was a Catholic Church member for many years, and Catholic Church burned her pretty bad. And I'm glad she started looking for a new church family, but a lot of people, all right, I'm done. I believe in God. I'll read the Bible at home. I'll, watch a video here and there, but I'm done with this whole religion thing. That's become like, I don't know. I don't want to say it's become a bad word, but it's become like, it really turns people off sometimes um, when churches are operating in a way that is maybe a little bit too self-centered, not as loving as they should be, and it really, really affects people. Some of the I remember some of the people that I talked to. Oh no, I don't go to church anymore because this happened, because that happened, because I saw this story about this pastor and one of the youth group girls. Like we are. Whether you're a pastor, a member, or leadership, whatever, if you're part of the church, if you're part of the Christian church, people are looking at you. People are looking at you for examples. And if you mess up, if you trip up a little bit, they'll use that against you. And they'll use that as an excuse to not go to church. Oh, well, you're just as bad as the rest of them. Maybe that leads into the statistics saying that, unbelievers don't see a difference between Christian people and everybody else. They just don't. But that goes back to like, we must be true believers. We must be all in. We must be willing to let God wear us like a garment, like you said back in Gideon. If you want what God wants, you're on your way. That's huge. Huge. Yeah, this chapter really opened my eyes about how things are going in today. And sometimes it feels depressing, but it's all about being present with people. It's all about not giving up and trying to fight back. Trying to fight back and make a lasting, long impact on people, because that's what matters. Did you guys read this, the questions at the end on pages 58 and 59? When Mordecai asked Esther to act on the people's behalf, how did she respond and why? And what might that teach us about committing to presence evangelism? I think she was being present when it was really hard with the king. Scared for her own life, but wanting to stick up for the people, because the people is what mattered.
I think sometimes we need to oppose things and stand up for in opposition of things that, you know, the mainstream or the norm is flowing with,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you know, maybe that's a lot why people say they don't see a difference. You know, if we're
Yeah.
just going with the crowd, you know,
Mhm.
following, you know, and not standing up and opposing things. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might get persecution from you know, or opposition from them, but then you have the people that are looking for that
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
too.
That's what really drew me to the Nazarene church, because I didn't grow up a Nazarene. I didn't grow up a Christian really at all. But that's what drew me into the Nazarene church, is that, like, all right, these are our articles of faith, and this is where it says in scripture that backs up each and every one of those. And it's not just one time where it says this one thing. It's like each article has like at least 4, 5, 8 different passages where it says this is what we believe and this is why we believe it. You know, the Nazarene church has always been very rooted in scripture. And I think that's important, because there's a lot of churches, especially in the last 5-10 years or so, that are more rooted in what they will interpret scripture to be rather than what it really says. So, but you're right, that kind of stuff draws people in, you know. The fake stuff draws people in too. I'm not going to say that it doesn't, but it's all about the kind of fruit you produce. Am I right?
Mm.
Yeah. The greatest love you can show is to give your life for your friends. You are my friends if you obey my commandments. I don't call you servants anymore, because a servant doesn't know what his master is doing. But I've called you friends because I've made known to you everything that I've heard from my Father. You didn't choose me, but I chose you. I have appointed you to go to produce the fruit that will last, and to ask the Father in my name to give you whatever you ask for. It's John 15:13-16. Don't act out of selfish ambition or be conceited. Instead, humbly think of others as being better than yourselves. Don't be concerned only out of your own interest, but also be concerned out of the interest of others. Have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. Although he was in the form of God and equal with God, he did not take advantage of his equality. Instead, he emptied himself by taking on the form of a servant. By becoming like other humans, by having a human appearance, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death on a cross. How do you interpret these two texts in the light of presence evangelism?
Well,
I think. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I like that it says that you, and the passage from John, you didn't choose me, but I chose you.
Mm-hmm.
And then earlier, when we're talking on page 51, it says, in our time, the 1, 2, 3, the third full paragraph down. In our time of unprecedented turmoil and technology, Jesus is actively reaching out to people where they are. Remember, he pursues. So it's that idea that Jesus is pursuing us, and we're pursuing the people that we're present with,
Mm-hmm.
and we're functioning as an intermediary or a tool so that he can use us. It goes back to this, that you didn't choose me, but I chose you, that Jesus is the one in charge.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one pursuing, he's the one choosing, he's the one appointing us to go, and those kinds of things.
Yeah. Surrender is hard, right? Allowing God to wear us like a cloth is hard, huh? Giving him the credit of something that we did, knowing that we didn't really do it on our own, that's hard. I think the two texts, they talk about selflessness quite a bit. Quite a bit. And earlier in the passage, it talks about, or earlier in the book, it talks about that also. Be prepared to be needed, to be depended on. No strings attached. Won't necessarily apply to the other person in a relationship. Me and Lauren talked about that a little bit. How does that feel? Like, you know, in no way was it saying that you need to, you know, engage in an unhealthy relationship with somebody else, but to be that selfless with somebody, to be that caring for somebody, to love somebody completely and fully, knowing that maybe they won't trust you 100% at first either. Like, you got to put yourself out there before they're ready to put themselves out there. Yeah, that's part of being present with people too. This is being selfless. You know, I think a lot of times we have walls that we put up. We have ways we want to guard ourselves against, you know, perceived hurt or rejection or something else like that. But that one paragraph there, that was pretty challenging, you know. We're not advocating for relationships without wise boundaries, but at the same time, we need to have that no strings attached kind of friendship with people, presence with people.
In Philippians 2:3-8, I like how it talks about or we can compare ourselves to the way like Jesus came in the form of man so that we could relate to him. And in Corinthians, Paul talks about how he became all things to all men so that he might save some. So in the same way God came down in the form of man, we should come in the form that people can receive us as well.
Wow.
So that's one way we can be present.
Wow. That's cool. Thanks for sharing that, man.
I felt a lot of pushback on that, like resistance on that. Maybe this is a question for Pastor Carey whenever he joins us. How do you have a no strings attached attitude? Giving when you're human and you're sinful and not want anything back. You know, like you can go into it saying, I'm not expecting anything, I don't want anything, but like if you're human, yourself, you know, sinful, like most of us are, to me, I think I would be like, I've given, and now what? You know, how is that healthy? That's my question, I guess. I don't know. I don't think I'm there. Is what I'm saying. Sounds really hard for me.
Humbly think of others as being better than yourselves. Serving other people rather than serving yourself. What do you think the unbelievers in your life want or need from you? Those are two very different things. Wanting and needing. But what do you think the unbelievers in your life want? We'll start with that. What do you think they want from you?
I'm not sure. I think they want you to be consistent, like to be a friend, and I think they're looking for some kind of consistency, not blowing in the wind with every whim that comes along.
Yeah.
Stability. Maybe not being needy.
I thought of acceptance. Because I'm just thinking of one of the things that was listed as why non-believers are critical of Christians is the thing about like rules and like you can't live up to these standards. So I would think the first thing, I have non-believer friends. I think they want to be to know that they're accepted. Like we accept you. I accept you. You're okay. You're in danger, but as a human being, I see you. I see who you are. So I think acceptance is something I think I've heard.
Unconditional love also can apply, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think it's I think it's important for us to, show people that don't really believe that it's not that we're like Lauren said, like we have to be more accepting, I guess. Especially if we want to get the message across to people. I think it is important to kind of be accepting to anything and anyone that wants to learn more about like what we practice and everything.
Yeah, I think some people will try to use that as like a test, maybe like, they realize that you're a Christian or whatever, and then they'll say something that they're into that, or they will, how do I say this? But they'll say, oh, I went to the bar until whatever time last night. I went home with this girl. Like they'll try to tell you something like shocking to see how you're going to react to that, to see if they can trust you or not. Like, how am I going to react when somebody says something like that? Oh, okay, whatever, like tell me more, something like that, rather than, oh, that's terrible, like stop telling me these things. They don't want to be that makes them feel rejected, that makes them feel like they're a bad person. And I think listening to people in love, accepting somebody is different than accepting their sin. That's different. That's not what we're saying. But listening in a non-judgmental way sometimes is a great way to be present with people, and maybe after time God through you will influence them to maybe change their ways just a little bit. But I've had that happen a couple of times at work where somebody will say something really jarring just to see how I would react, and like, oh, this guy's just a judgy Christian. I can't trust him anymore. So that's important. It's important to know also, like, how are you coming off to others? Because people are always watching.
Yeah,
People pay attention. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important. As you were talking, I was thinking, people, I think unbelievers, they might see themselves as their sin. They might think that we are looking at them as they are identified by their sin. That is not the same thing. You are not your sin. Like your sin is separate from who you are. And I think accepting someone like you are a human, you are a child of God, whether you know it yet or not, you are not your sin. And that's how we need to see people, and we need to convey that. Like, we're all full of sin. We're all on a spectrum. So just seeing people as people and children of God and their potential rather than their sin, I think is huge.
Yeah.
Reading this question, I kind of read it in two different ways. I feel like, well, all people need Jesus, all people need the gospel. But the one thing I heard before was that our needs in every case might not be objective as the gospel or Jesus, but it might be the want. So then the need becomes subjective because it feeds the want. Like, what do you need, or you have certain needs to get what you want.
Mhm.
So I was kind of wondering, how do you get people to want Jesus?
Mm. You have to realize that they need him, I think. How do you get there? I don't know. You know?
I think through several stories that have been shared just so far in this book, you take the Chinese restaurant, you take the coffee house, and things like that, where people can just tell that something is different about this person. They can see the light emanating from this person. When it's no physical light, they could just feel it. You ever have somebody like that in your life, maybe in your church or maybe not in your church, just like a mentor that you look up to them because you could tell like Jesus is in and through them, and you want to be close to them all the time, like a bug is to a light at nighttime. Like you just want to be close to it because you could see that light coming from that person, and they want that. I think maybe that's how you can get someone to realize that they need Jesus, because once they ask that question, like, what is it about you that's different? What is it about you that's attracting me to you? That kind of opens up the opportunity to share the gospel with them. That kind of opens up the opportunity to be a little bit more open with them. It starts with being present. It starts with loving people unconditionally, completely and wholly. And then they see like, what is it about you that loves me like this? Even though I'm so terrible in my own eyes, like, why do you love me this much? And that kind of opens up, all right, well, let me tell you about my Jesus, And I think that's what can get people to want Jesus in their life, is just seeing Jesus in you without even knowing that they're seeing him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Because people won't respond. Maybe they used to, but anymore, you go to the streets of Philadelphia and you just start screaming sermons on the street corner. Like people are just going.
Yeah, I guess you kind of have to show them like God's power, like what God's power really is. Like what he can actually do, and not just tell them. Kind of have them, like you were saying, have them see what he does in your life, and as well as other people's around you.
Yeah. Some people you can be direct with and just share the gospel immediately, but I'd say most people, the vast majority of people, need to see Christ in you at work before they're ready to receive him in themselves.
And a lot of times that's through meeting a need, a practical need, a physical need. You mentioned Philadelphia, and there's so many ministries, and Kensington, and those people see so much more of Jesus through people than we do in the suburbs, because we're comfortable. And it's meeting those needs, practical needs, food, handing out coats, Thanksgiving Day meals. That's what Jesus motivated and called them to do.
Yeah.
And they feel that.
Yeah. Pastor West Tank can tell you all about that from Front Step. He's right in the middle of Philadelphia, doing all kinds of great work. And it starts with that, just giving out clothes, shoes, coats, stuff like that. And then that gets them involved in all the extra youth programs and things that they have.
Why would you do that? Why would you see me? Like, I'm nobody. I'm worthless to my family, to society. I'm worthless. I'm homeless. But you see me, you clothe me, why?
I think that's a great way to answer that last question. What do people want or need from you? They want to be seen. They just want to be seen. Yeah. Okay. So we're coming up on an hour. I promised Pastor Owen I'd keep it to an hour. I don't want to keep everybody. So I'm going to close out pretty soon. That was a good discussion, guys. That was good. I love how I can just like outline a couple of things, like highlight a couple of things. I have no agenda in my book at all. I'm just like, hey, I read this. It was pretty cool. What do you guys think? And I love that. Like, I'm not teaching. I'm more like facilitating a conversation. And I love how everybody chips in. their thoughts and the way that God's talking to them. I thought it's been pretty cool over these past 4 weeks. So I'm going to close this out. Does anybody have any other prayer requests that they didn't share an hour ago that they like to now? And you can write it in the chat. You can also tell Pastor Kendra and she can get that emailed out. Lots of different ways. And if they need to be private, you can message me personally if you want, or Pastor Kendra, whatever you guys need.
Yeah, I got one.
What's up, Devin?
My girlfriend, she's been going through like a lot with mental health and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Just prayers and comfort for her.
Yeah, for sure, man. Okay. All right. Let's close this out in prayer then. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for the conversation that we just had over the past hour, God. I want to thank you for teaching us presence evangelism, God. Teach us to be present with people. Teach us to see people who they are, not for what they've done or not for how they look. Just see people for who they are and how you made them, God. Show us how to love people completely and wholly the way that you love people. God, Jesus had so many examples of loving people that were seemingly unlovable to the masses, but he did it, God. And he is our example. So if he did it, God, show us how to do it. Give us the courage to do it. Give us the ability to do it. God, take away the doubts and fears in our hearts and fill us with your love, God. God, as we go about this week, continue to speak to us. Continue to teach us how to be present with people, God. May we practice how to be present with people. God, I want to thank you for Bob's appointment and about how it went well. I want to thank you that Stephen's knee is doing better pain-wise, but that lump is still there. So, God, he still needs attention. And his family still needs to see your love, God. So as they're dealing with the death in the family, may Stephen be Jesus to his family. God, may you be with Susan on Friday for her doctor's appointment. May you be with her every day, God, and be with her family, be with her kids and her husband. And God, give them patience, give them love, give them endurance, and let them just pour into her in ways that only you know that she needs. God, I want to pray for Devin's girlfriend, and she's dealing with mental health issues. Not sure what they are, but you know what they are, God. And you know the kind of healing that she needs. You know, you put somebody awesome in her life, Devin, who's able to be the light of Jesus to her, God. So may you bless him and show him the right way to invest into her. God, I want to thank you for the way that you've been speaking to us for the past month. I want to thank you for these meetings that we have online. I want to thank you for the fellowship that we're able to have through the internet, God. Thank you for the connections that we're making. And may we continue to be present and love people completely and wholly. Say these things in Jesus' holy name. Amen. Amen. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank
You're
you.
loved.
Good
If
night.
you ever need anything, go ahead and reach out. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you. God bless.